So you always hear the term progressive overload and you understand that it's important, but you still don't actually know what it is or how to use it in the gym to maximize your results. So in this video, I'm going to explain exactly what progressive overload is, and then I'm going to tell you how to use it when you're inside of the gym to make sure you get the most out of your sessions. So first off, progressive overload is not as complicated as it sounds. Okay, I know the first time I heard it, I was like, this sounds very complicated, but it's not. I honestly don't even know how I'm going to create an entire video on progressive overload, but let's see how this goes. Progressive overload is actually a pretty broad term. It simply means gradually increasing the difficulty of your workouts over time. That's it. Now, there's obviously a bunch of different ways you can do that, and we'll talk about that a bit later and how you can practically do that in your workouts each day. But first off, let's talk about why progressive overload is important. So the way I like to think of progressive overload is just never getting comfortable in your workouts. I know that's not necessarily what you want to hear, but that's just the truth. As soon as something starts getting easier, whether that's the amount of reps you do or the amount of weight you use, whatever it may be, make it harder. And the reason we want to do this is because we want to force growth. Growth won't happen if you don't give it a reason to happen. Okay, a good analogy you can think about is the donkey and the carrot on the stick. If you sit on a donkey and you have a carrot on a stick in front of the donkey, he's going to run towards that carrot and you're going to move forward. But if you give him the carrot, he's going to stop running because there's not going to be a carrot, or there's no incentive for him to run towards something anymore. So either you keep the carrot on the stick and he keeps running after it because he thinks eventually he's going to get to the carrot, or if now and then you give him the carrot, you need to make sure there's another bigger carrot that you put in front of him after you just gave him the carrot. Otherwise, he's not going to keep on running forward. And it's exactly the same thing with your muscles. If you don't give them a reason to grow and get stronger, they're not going to grow and get stronger. So in very simple terms, you can just think of progressive overload as you giving your muscles a reason to grow. So now that you understand that progressive overload is basically just you gradually making your workouts harder over time and giving your muscles a reason to grow and to get stronger, I can move on and explain to you how to practically do this in your workouts every day. Now, as I mentioned previously, there are different ways you can practically apply progressive overload into your workouts. I'm going to talk about the most common ways you can do that, and personally the ways that I found works best. So first of all, what you can do is super simple, is just increase the weights as you get stronger. So hypothetically, let's say in week 1 you are able to bench press 135 pounds for 10 reps. After week 2 and 3, you're going to get stronger if you're consistent and if your diet's on point and wada. If you do all of those other things right, you're going to get stronger. And you're going to find that, oh, maybe in week 1 I was only able to do 135 for 10 reps, but now in week 3 or 4, I can do it for 12 to 13 reps. And the problem is some people would just stop there. It's nice. Now it's easy to do 10 reps, where in week 1 it wasn't easy, it was uncomfortable. So I'm just going to stay here because it's comfortable and I got stronger, I feel good about myself, I'm going to keep on making progress. But that's not the case. If you just keep on doing 135 pounds for 10 reps, even though you can do it for 14 or 15 reps, you're not going to make very good progress because you're not giving your muscles a reason to get stronger. Your body realizes that, okay, we only need to do 135 pounds for 10 reps. So there's no reason for us to put on more muscle because we can now do 10 reps with 135 pounds pretty easily. So what you do in this situation is you add more weight to the bar. So now you do maybe 145 pounds and now you're only able to do 10 reps again. Then you keep going like that for another few weeks, and before you even know it, you'll be able to do 145 pounds for 12 or 13 reps. And then you just do the same thing. Obviously, I'm just using hypothetical numbers over here. You don't have to do 10 reps or 12 reps. The point is just, if you usually aim, for example, 8 reps, and after 3 weeks you can do 13 or 14 reps easily with the same weight, then you need to go heavier. Otherwise, you're not giving your body a reason to build more muscle. The rule of thumb I always like to use is, obviously, if you were able to do, for example, 135 pounds for 8 reps, and 4 weeks later you can do it for around 11 reps, then add so much weight to the bar that you're only able to do 7 to 8 reps with that weight. You don't want to add so much weight to the bar that you're dropping to 3 or 4 reps, but you also want to add enough so that you don't stay at 11 reps. Once again, these are all hypothetical numbers. It doesn't have to be 8 to 10 reps or 12 to 14 reps. whatever you're used to, just make sure when you're able to do a lot more reps than you used to be able to do, add more weight until you drop down to that same rep range you started off with. And then you repeat that process over and over again. So that's increasing the weight. This is usually how I do things because I don't want to go on to a point where I do 30 reps. So I just add more weight and then I stay within the same rep ranges. The second way you can practically apply progressive overload into your workouts is by just doing more reps. So going back to our previous analogy, if you started off being able to do 135 pounds for 10 reps and 3 weeks later you can do it for 14 reps, don't stop at 10 reps, do 14 reps, and then another 4 weeks later, you're able to do 18 reps. Don't stop at 14 reps, do 18 reps. Keep on increasing your reps so your body has a reason to build muscle and get stronger. Now, as I said, I don't prefer this method because otherwise you're eventually going to get to a point where you do like 50 reps and that's just going to take very long. You can also obviously do a mixture of both, add a bit more weight, do a bit more reps, as long as you keep on making it harder for yourself and you don't reach a point where you're doing your set and it was just comfortable. And then just another way that you can also practically apply progressive overload is just slowing down how fast you do your reps. And I used this a lot a while back when I had an injury because I couldn't go heavier because then it put more stress on my wrist or on my injury, but I also didn't want to do 50 reps because it would take forever. So instead of doing more reps or adding more weight, I would just go very slowly. So I'd only do like 10 reps with a pretty light weight, but because I went so slow, my muscles got tired a lot quicker. So those are the three main ways you can apply progressive overload into your workouts. Now, I once again want to stress how important it is because it doesn't help you get into the gym. You start off, you get stronger, and then you just stay comfortable. I get it, it's very tempting. You get on the bench press, you do a certain amount of reps with a certain weight, and then after a few weeks that becomes easy and you're okay with just staying there and staying comfortable. But if you do that, you're not going to make good progress. You need to push yourself constantly. Add more weight, do more reps, do slower reps, whatever you prefer. Make sure you keep your workouts intense and you don't ever get comfortable. Otherwise, your muscles won't have a reason to grow. Now, don't get me wrong, progressive overload doesn't mean hurting yourself, using so much weight that you get injuries or doing so much reps that you can't even move the next day. It just means constantly pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. Now, you have to understand progressive overload is not going to do anything for you in a week or two. It takes time, it takes months, even years to see good results. Yes, you'll see the effects of progressive overload in a few weeks if you actually train hard and if your diet and your recovery is on point, but you're not going to go from an out of shape person to a jacked person in a few weeks because you apply progressive overload. That takes time. So if you can take one thing away from this video, is just stay uncomfortable. Don't ever go into your workout trying to stay comfortable. As long as you stay uncomfortable, as long as you push yourself until you're very tired, you will make progress. I really hope this video gave you some clarity on what progressive overload is and how you can start applying it into your workouts. Today, most of you probably already do it, you just don't know you do it. I know for me, I didn't even know what progressive overload was when I started out, but I subconsciously applied it into my workouts simply because I had an ego and I wanted to go as heavy as I possibly could. So every week, if I was able to do just one more rep with a specific weight, I would add more weight to that bar because my ego wanted to look as good as possible and go with as much weight as possible. So that's the one place where my ego actually helped me a bit. I constantly went heavier, did more reps, and if you can just make sure you do that, you will make progress. Go take action on this. I'll see you guys in the next video.